You've found Dreamtime Science, a peaceful corner where we unravel the mysteries of our universe one whisper at a time. Let the gentle current of discovery carry you towards sleep. You know, I've been thinking about how we live on this little blue planet, surrounded by so much energy all around us. From the warmth of the sun to the power of the wind and oceans. There's something remarkable about imagining a future where humans might learn to gently and wisely harness all that energy, becoming what some call a Type 1 civilization. It's a quiet kind of wonder, wondering how close we really are to stepping into that next chapter of our story. Should these dreamy explorations accompany your journey to sleep, a gentle like or subscription would be deeply appreciated. What questions about our universe keep you wonderfully curious? Take this moment to settle in, wrap yourself in comfort, release the day's weight from your shoulders, and let your breath become as gentle as starlight. Out in the silent reaches of the cosmos, far from the comforting blue of Earth, there is a question that haunts the thoughts of dreamers, scientists, and storytellers alike. What is the measure of a civilization? Not the content of its character, nor the sweep of its history, but something more elemental and universal, its command of energy, its ability to harness the might of stars and worlds. This is a question that, once asked, opens the mind to dizzying vistas, to the slow cosmic dance of possibility. Across the decades, many have peered into this abyss of speculation, but it was the Russian astrophysicist Nikolai Kardashev who, in 1964, gave us a ruler with which to measure the ambitions of civilizations, whether known or yet to be imagined. His idea, at once simple and profound, became known as the Kardashev scale. It is not a scale of moral worth or artistic genius, but a ladder of energy mastery, stretching from the humble fires of a single planet to the incandescent fury of an entire galaxy. The Kardashev scale, in its earliest form, was a triptych. Type I, a civilization that can use and store all the energy available on its home planet. Type 2, a civilization that can capture the total energy output of its parent star. Type 3, a civilization that commands the energy of its entire galaxy. Each rung on this ladder stands not just as a technical achievement, but as a testament to the unity, vision, and adaptability of a people, whoever they might be, wherever they may reside in the vast theatre of the universe. To begin our journey, let us linger on the first rung, Type 1, for it is here that the shadows of science and science fiction most often meet, where the hopes and fears of our own species are projected onto the blank canvas of the future. In the quiet moments before sleep, as the mind drifts and wanders, it is worthwhile to contemplate what it would truly mean to ascend to this first level, to become a planetary civilization. In its essence, a Type 1 civilization is defined by its energy consumption. To reach this level, a species must be able to utilize, manipulate, and store every joule of energy that falls upon its world, from the sunlight bathing its continents and seas, to the winds that sweep across its mountain ranges, and the geothermal heat bubbling beneath its crust. It is an audacious threshold, and one that, by the reckoning of physicists, remains just out of our grasp. The sum of energy falling upon the Earth each year is staggering, measured in the hundreds of thousands of exajoules. Humanity, for all its ingenuity and restlessness, currently harnesses only a fraction of this bounty. But the concept of a Type 1 civilization is more than a dry calculation. It is a mirror held up to our species, reflecting both our achievements and our limitations. To reach Type 1 is to have solved, or at least tamed, the great challenges of energy, to have woven solar, wind, hydroelectric, and geothermal power into a seamless tapestry, to have transcended the fragility of fossil fuels and the perils of pollution. It implies a certain harmony with the planet, a mastery that does not destroy but transforms, that channels the wild abundance of nature without exhausting it. In the pages of science fiction, the march to Type 1 is often portrayed as a crucible of transformation. Authors and screenwriters have long been drawn to the spectacle of planetary unity, whether depicted as a shining utopia or as a hard-won peace following centuries of discord. The late Carl Sagan, that poet of the cosmos, once remarked that humanity is a civilization in adolescence, teetering between self-destruction and maturity. In his telling, the ascent to Type 1 is not merely a technical feat, but a passage through the storms of tribalism, short-sightedness, and environmental neglect. It is, in his words, the moment when a species becomes truly planetary, aware of itself, at home on its world, and capable of stewarding its resources with wisdom. The science fiction canon is replete with visions of Type 1 civilizations, shimmering with the promise of abundance and cooperation. In Arthur C. Clarke's The Songs of Distant Earth, humanity's cradle has become a world of gentle harmony, its energy needs met by the sun and the sea. In Isaac Asimov's sprawling Foundation series, the memory of planetary mastery is but a distant echo, part of a galactic tapestry in which Type 1 is the forgotten first step. Even the utopian vision of Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek presumes a world that has conquered scarcity, its power drawn not from the bowels of the earth, but from the stars above. Yet the Kardashev scale is not a prophecy, but a framework, a way to think about the possible. It is an invitation to imagine both the technical and social transformations required to cross its thresholds. For a moment, let us pause and consider the energy ledgers of our own time. Humanity's current consumption hovers somewhere around 18 terawatts, a number that, while immense by historical standards, is still dwarfed by the energy our planet receives from the sun alone. To reach Type 1, we would need to increase our energy use by several orders of magnitude, but not through mere profligacy. Rather, it would demand innovation, integration, and above all, a new relationship with the world around us. The path to Type 1 is not paved solely with solar panels and wind turbines, though these are essential tools. It would require the intelligent orchestration of all forms of energy, from the tides that surge and retreat with the pull of the moon to the relentless heat deep within the Earth's mantle. It would demand advances in storage and transmission, in efficiency and conservation. In this imagined future, the wasteful burning of coal and oil would be a relic, a memory of a more primitive age. Cities would pulse with clean, abundant power. Deserts would bloom with solar arrays. The air itself would be free from the haze of combustion. But there is another side to this vision, a complexity often overlooked in tales of technological triumph. To become a Type 1, civilization is also to grapple with the scale of our own impact. The mastery of energy is not without risk. It brings with it the possibility of climate change, of unintended consequences rippling through the delicate webs of life. The very same power that allows us to reshape our world could, if wielded recklessly, tip the balance toward catastrophe. The stories we tell about Type 1 civilizations are, therefore, as much cautionary tales as they are blueprints for progress. Carl Sagan, ever the optimist tempered by realism, saw the journey to Type 1 as a race against time, a test of whether our wisdom could keep pace with our power. In his vision, the transition is fraught with danger. The risk of ecological collapse, the spectre of nuclear war, the challenge of forging global cooperation in the face of ancient divisions. Yet he also saw hope, the potential for a planetary consciousness, a sense of shared destiny born out of necessity as much as aspiration. In the cultural imagination, the idea of a Type 1 civilization has become a kind of lodestar, a point on the horizon toward which we might steer our course. It is invoked in discussions of climate change, in debates over renewable energy, in the rhetoric of international summits and grassroots movements alike. It is, in many ways, an emblem of what it means to be modern, restless, ambitious, reaching always for the next rung of the ladder. But there is a quiet, almost spiritual dimension to this idea as well. To become a Type 1 civilization is to accept the responsibility of stewardship, to recognize that we are not apart from the earth but integrally bound to it. The energy that powers our homes and cities is the same energy that animates the forests and oceans, that drives the cycles of weather and life. The transition to planetary mastery, then, is not just a matter of engineering, but of perspective, a widening of the circle of concern, an expansion of empathy to encompass all who share this fragile world. As we drift deeper into the night, let us consider the subtle ways in which the Kardashev scale has seeped into the fabric of our dreams. It appears in the shimmering domes of speculative cities, in the intricate networks of global communication, in the hopeful visions of a united humanity. It is both a map and a mirror, reflecting not only what we might become, but what we already are, a species perched on the threshold, capable of great creation and great destruction, seeking always to balance the two. The scale, though devised with the cold precision of astrophysics, has become a canvas for the imagination. It invites us to ask not only what is possible, but what is desirable. What kind of world would we inhabit if we were to harness all the energy of the wind and sun, if we were to tame the restless seas and the molten heart of the earth? Would we find abundance and peace, or would new challenges arise, as yet unimagined? The stories we tell about Type 1 civilizations are as varied as the storytellers themselves. Some see a shining age of progress, where disease and want are banished, and the arts and sciences flourish. Others warn of the dangers of hubris, of the risks that come with unchecked power. Still others find wonder in the very act of striving, in the slow, collective ascent toward a future that is always just out of reach. Even now, in the quiet hours, the dream persists. Somewhere between the hush of sleep and the first stirrings of dawn, the notion of a planetary civilization flickers in the mind, a beacon and a mystery, a question and a promise. It is the first step in a cosmic dance, a threshold that beckons us onward, even as it reminds us of the distance yet to travel. In contemplating the Kardashev scale, we are reminded that we are not alone in our aspirations. Across the vastness of space, there may be others who have walked this path, who have faced the same trials and temptations, who have made their own choices, for better or worse. The scale offers a common language, a way to imagine the journeys of civilizations far stranger than our own, bound together by the universal currency of energy. Yet for now, our gaze returns to Earth, to the only home we have ever known. The dream of Type 1 remains before us, shimmering with possibility and peril. It is a vision that challenges us to reach higher, to think more deeply, to care more profoundly for the world and its inhabitants. And as we close our eyes and drift towards sleep, the dance continues, slow, patient, inexorable, drawing us onward, step by tentative step, into the unmapped future. Far ahead, beyond the horizon of present understanding, lie new rungs on the scale, more audacious still, waiting for the civilizations bold enough to grasp them. But tonight, let us linger in the soft glow of planetary dreams and listen for the quiet pulse of possibility, beating just beneath the surface of what is and what might yet be. Let us now find ourselves adrift on the shores of possibility, where the quiet hum of civilization swells toward a crescendo not yet reached. The path to becoming a Type 1 civilization, the longed-for moment when humanity truly harnesses the full bounty of a planet, stretches tantalizingly ahead, a borderland between what is and what might one day be. To stand at this threshold is to peer into the very engine room of progress, where the sinews of society are stretched by the demands of energy, technology, and sheer will. Here the story grows intricate, braided with both promise and peril, as we probe the boundaries of our understanding and the formidable obstacles that must be mastered. To begin, consider the measure itself. What does it mean to be a Type 1 civilization? The term, introduced by the astrophysicist Nikolai Kardashev, is not merely poetic, though it evokes a planetary drama, but rather rooted in the cold arithmetic of energy. A Type 1 civilization, by his reckoning, is one that can capture and wield all the energy that falls upon a planet from its parent star, or is generated within the planet itself. For Earth, this sum is staggering, a ceaseless cascade of sunlight, wind, tides, and the slow subterranean churn of geothermal heat. At present, our species, for all its cleverness, sips only a fraction of this ocean. Our current global energy consumption hovers humbly at about 18 terawatts, a whisper beside the approximate 174,000 terawatts of solar energy that rain down upon our world each moment, or the still vaster stores locked beneath our feet. The first boundary, then, is a quantitative one, a gulf between what is available and what is accessible. To cross it, humanity must ascend a ladder of technological sophistication, each rung a challenge to our ingenuity. It is not simply a matter of building bigger power plants or stringing more wires across the landscape. The very fabric of civilization must be rewoven. Our cities, our industries, our daily lives, all must be transformed to synchronize with an energy flow that is orders of magnitude greater than what we now command. Yet before we can dream of such abundance, we must confront the limitations of our current methods. Fossil fuels, those ancient compressed vestiges of primordial sunlight, have powered our ascent thus far. They have fueled revolutions, industrial, agricultural, digital, and drawn forth the modern world from the loam of history. But their gifts are double-edged. They are finite, and their combustion exudes a heavy price into the atmosphere, altering the climate and perturbing the subtle balances of the biosphere. The challenge is not only to find new sources of energy, but to do so in a way that treads lightly upon the world that sustains us. Here, the boundary is as much ethical as it is technical, a test of foresight and collective responsibility. The sun, in its generosity, offers a solution. Each hour, it lavishes upon the earth more energy than all of humanity uses in a year. To reach for Type 1 status is, in essence, to learn to drink deeply from this wellspring. But the task is not trivial. Solar panels, though multiplying across rooftops and deserts, still face limits of efficiency and storage. The sun's bounty is intermittent, waxing and waning with the hours, the seasons, and the caprice of clouds. To depend upon it fully requires a revolution in storage. Batteries capable of holding days, weeks, perhaps even months of energy. Chemical, thermal, mechanical, biological, each approach is being explored in laboratories and test sites around the world as researchers strive to bottle sunlight for the long, dark stretches when it is absent. Wind, too, is harnessed, its invisible force captured by the slow, majestic turning of turbines. In some places it blows constant and strong, in others it is a fleeting guest. Here again, the challenge is to smooth out the variability, to integrate these unruly flows into a grid that demands reliability and precision. The very design of our energy networks must change, evolving from the rigid centralized systems of the past to agile, adaptive webs that can balance supply and demand in real time. Algorithms, sensors, and artificial intelligence are drawn into the task, orchestrating a ballet of electrons that traces the pulse of civilization itself. Beyond the winds and the sun, the restless seas offer their own invitations. Tides pulled by the moon, waves driven by storms, the slow, inexorable movement of thermal gradients deep beneath the surface. Each harbours immense energy, but each is uniquely difficult to tame. Tidal barrages and underwater turbines are still experimental, facing fierce engineering challenges and uncertain economics. The ocean, for all its power, is a realm of corrosion, turbulence, and hidden dangers, an environment that tests the mettle of even the most robust machines. And then, beneath our feet, the Earth stores heat, remnant fire from its birth, radioactive decay, and the friction of tectonic plates. Geothermal energy in certain places can be tapped with relative ease, providing steady baseload power. In others, it lies deeply buried, locked away behind layers of rock impenetrable to ordinary drills. New techniques, directional drilling, enhanced geothermal systems, perhaps even the use of supercritical fluids, promise to expand our reach, but each brings its own suite of technical and environmental questions. All these sources taken together could one day satisfy the voracious appetite of a Type 1 civilization. But the path is not simply one of accumulation. Each new source must be integrated, balanced, and managed. The grid, the nervous system of civilization, must be rewired not just to carry more power, but to do so flexibly, resiliently, in the face of storms, cyber attacks, and the unpredictable surges of demand that accompany modern life. There are, too, the frontiers of nuclear power. Fission, splitting the heavy atoms of uranium and plutonium, already supplies a significant share of the world's electricity. It is dense, reliable, and, if properly managed, relatively clean in its emissions. Yet it carries the spectre of accidents, waste, and proliferation. Here, the challenge is as much social as it is technical, to build trust, to manage risks, to innovate new reactor designs that are safer and more sustainable. There is hope, too, in the distant promise of fusion, the joining of light atoms, as in the heart of the sun. For decades, this has remained just beyond our grasp, constrained by the immense technical difficulty of containing plasma at the necessary temperatures and pressures. But progress, though slow, is steady. Each new experiment brings us a little closer to the day when we might light our cities with the same fire that burns in the stars. As we contemplate these technologies, the scale of the challenge becomes clear. To reach Type 1 status, humanity must not only multiply its energy output by orders of magnitude, but do so while safeguarding the stability of the planet. This is the paradox at the heart of the journey, to master the power of a world without overwhelming it. Each advance brings with it new risks, ecological, geopolitical, even existential. Power lines must snake across continents. Batteries must be built from rare metals mined from deep within the earth or synthesized in sprawling chemical plants. New infrastructure must rise in places both wild and densely populated. The sheer logistics are staggering. Mines, factories, ports, and recycling centers must all be coordinated on a planetary scale, demanding levels of cooperation and planning that have rarely, if ever, been achieved. And yet energy is only one axis of the transformation. Technology, in all its forms, must accelerate in tandem. Communications networks must become more robust, more secure, and more inclusive, knitting together billions of people in a seamless web. Education must spread, lifting the standard of knowledge and technical literacy to heights undreamed of in previous centuries. Medical advances must keep pace, ensuring that the benefits of progress are not undone by new diseases or the resurgence of old ones. Transportation, too, must evolve. Cars and trains and ships powered not by fossil fuels, but by clean electricity or synthetic fuels or something as yet unimagined. Underlying all of this is the question of governance. Who will oversee the construction of a planetary grid? How will resources be allocated, technologies shared, and risks managed? The challenge is not just technical, but profoundly political, a test of our ability to cooperate across borders, cultures, and ideologies. History provides both warnings and encouragement, moments when nations have worked together to solve global problems, and others where rivalry and mistrust have led to stagnation or catastrophe. Moreover, there are the subtler boundaries, those of psychology, culture, and worldview. To become a Type 1. Civilization is to think and act on a planetary scale, to see oneself not just as a resident of a city or a nation, but as an inhabitant of Earth. This shift is perhaps the most daunting of all. It demands empathy that stretches across continents, a sense of stewardship that encompasses forests, oceans, and atmosphere alike. It calls for humility in the face of complexity and uncertainty, and for courage to make choices whose consequences may not be fully understood for generations. Consider, for a moment, the challenge of scale. The infrastructure needed to capture, store, and transmit energy at planetary levels is vast. An intricate lattice of machines and networks, sensors and software, stretching from the depths of the ocean to the highest mountaintops. The materials required, copper, lithium, rare earth elements, are distributed unevenly across the globe, their extraction fraught with environmental and social impacts. Recycling and circular economies become not just preferable, but essential, lest the quest for power inadvertently strip the planet bare. Yet, even as we contemplate these daunting prospects, there is in the air a whiff of possibility. New materials are being invented, graphene, perovskites, advanced ceramics, that promise lighter, stronger, more efficient energy systems. Artificial intelligence offers the hope of managing complexity at scales unfathomable to any individual mind, optimizing everything from grid operations to resource allocation. Biotechnology may provide new pathways for storing energy, capturing carbon, or even repairing damaged ecosystems. The boundary between what is possible and what is impossible is not fixed, but shifting, drawn anew with each breakthrough, each act of imagination. And so the journey to Type 1 status is not a single leap, but a series of steps, each demanding not just technological prowess, but adaptability, foresight, and wisdom. At every stage we encounter new boundaries, physical, social, ethical, each more subtle and intricate than the last. To cross them is to remake ourselves, not just as individuals or nations, but as a species. As night deepens and the stars wheel overhead, one might pause to wonder, will we rise to the challenge or falter at the threshold? Will the power of a planet be our liberation or our undoing? These questions linger, unresolved, as the journey continues. For beyond the horizon of Type 1 lies an even greater expanse, one in which the power of a single world is but the first of many keys to the wider universe. In the gentle hush of the pre-dawn world, as the city's lights flicker against the retreating night, you might sense the silent humming of possibility. The world, like a vast engine, has begun to stir, not just with the noise of waking life, but with the quiet, relentless workings of minds set on a singular epical task. For as we rise each day, we are, each of us, unwitting participants in a planetary experiment, a century-spanning quest to become a civilization that commands the full bounty of its world. Our journey toward Type 1 status, as imagined by the bold theorist Nikolai Kardashev, is not merely a dream or an abstraction. It unfolds in laboratories and classrooms, in humming data centers and wind-swept fields of solar panels, in the fevered calculations of scientists and the measured steps of engineers. Tonight, in the gentle passage between waking and sleep, we will walk among the tools and ideas that are shaping this transformation, seeing not only what has been built, but what is quietly being born. Long before the phrase Type 1 was whispered among the stars, the history of our ascent was written in the language of tools. The first spark, the first stone blade, the first shelter against the cold. Each was an extension of our minds, a way to bend the environment to our needs. In the deep time of our species, these were modest beginnings, powered by muscle and patience. But as centuries wheeled past, as civilizations rose and fell, the tools became more intricate, the ambitions more grand. Water wheels turned rivers into motion, looms wove sunlight into cloth. The steam engine, chugging and hissing through the heart of the Industrial Revolution, taught us that energy, harnessed and focused, could reshape continents. Yet, for all the ingenuity of past ages, the real transformation began when we learned to see the world not just as a source of raw materials, but as a system to be understood, measured, and at times protected. This shift, subtle, profound, set the stage for the age of science. It was no longer enough to simply use the world. We yearned to know its secrets. So let us walk now, softly, through the centuries' halls, and pause before one of the earliest and most powerful tools, the scientific method. It is not a machine or a gadget, but a disciplined way of asking questions. With careful observation, with hypotheses tested against nature itself, we began to peel back the layers of mystery. From Galileo's telescopes to Faraday's spinning coils, the method gave us a lantern to carry into the unknown. Its greatest gift was not just knowledge, but the humility to know how little we truly grasped. From this foundation, the scaffolding of modern science rose. Consider for a moment the sprawling networks of sensors and satellites that now gird our planet. In the cool, silent corridors of remote observatories and control centers, we listen to the heartbeat of Earth itself. These instruments, some as small as a grain of rice, others the size of city blocks, measure the shifting winds, the trembling crust, the flux of magnetic fields. They send back rivers of data, minute by minute, day by day, painting a living portrait of the planet's energy flows. Thanks to such tools, we have for the first time a true sense of the scale of our endeavor. We know, for instance, that the sunlight striking the Earth each hour is enough to power our civilization for a year, if only we had the means to gather and store it. We have mapped the restless tides, the ceaseless winds, the heat that seeps from the planet's molten heart. In the flickering glow of computer screens, scientists model the complex dance of climate, the subtle interplay of carbon and water and sunlight. These models, vast, intricate, and ever-evolving, are both prophecy and warning. They show us not only what is, but what might be if we choose wisely or foolishly. But knowledge alone is not enough. To become a Type 1, civilization is not simply to understand energy, but to wield it wisely and cleanly, to draw it from the world without poisoning the well from which we drink. And so, our journey brings us to the great fields of solar panels stretching toward the horizon, to the elegant turbines that turn in the ocean wind, to the silent, buried cables that thread continents together. Each is an experiment, a question asked of the universe. Can we live in harmony with the forces that sustain us? The rise of renewable energy is a story told in both sweeping vistas and minute details. In deserts, engineers orchestrate the ballet of heliostats, thousands of mirrors that track the sun and focus its rays onto towers, generating heat to boil water, to drive turbines, to light cities. In the deep seas, floating wind farms ride the swells, their blades spinning in the salt breeze. High above, satellites watch, measuring the shifting albedo of cloud and land, mapping the invisible footprints of our industries. These technologies are more than metal and silicon, they are embodiments of hope. Each new solar cell, coaxed toward higher efficiency, is a tiny revolution. Each battery, built to store more energy, to last longer, is a promise kept to the future. And yet, the path is not without its shadows. The rare metals that power our electronics are dug from fragile places. The batteries that store our sunlight must one day be recycled or replaced. The wind turbines, graceful as dancers, sometimes disrupt the rhythms of bird and bat. Each solution, in turn, becomes a new challenge to be solved. So the experiments continue. In laboratories bright with the glow of plasma, physicists chase the dream of fusion, the power of the stars, tamed for our world. The great tokamaks and stellarators, machines of staggering complexity, confine superheated hydrogen in magnetic embrace, striving for the moment when atoms merge and energy is released in abundance. It is a quest marked by patience, by incremental triumphs and daunting setbacks. For decades the joke has been that fusion is always 30 years away, and yet with each passing year the horizon inches closer. New materials, smarter algorithms, international collaborations, each brings us nearer to the day when the sun's fire burns here on Earth. Not all experiments are so grand in scale. In hidden corners of the world, researchers explore the mysteries of photosynthesis, seeking to mimic the leaf's quiet alchemy. Artificial leaves, grown from layers of exotic compounds, split water with sunlight, storing energy as nature does. In the hum of bioreactors, algae and bacteria are coaxed to produce fuels and chemicals, weaving new cycles of energy from ancient lessons. At the same time, our tools grow ever more subtle, more deeply embedded in the fabric of daily life. The smart grid, an intricate mesh of sensors, controls, and artificial intelligence, monitors the flow of electricity, matching supply and demand with exquisite precision. It learns the patterns of cities and towns, adapting in real time, smoothing peaks and filling valleys. In the home, appliances whisper to one another, shifting their cycles to catch the sun, to ride the wind, to draw power not from distant plants, but from the world outside the window. Underlying all these advances is the silent revolution of information. The vast libraries of knowledge, once held in guarded halls, are now scattered like seeds across the digital landscape. Open data, open science, collaborative platforms, these are the new tools of discovery. In the quiet of the night, a student in Mumbai can analyze the same climate data as a professor in Boston. A citizen scientist, armed with a smartphone, can measure the air, the water, the soil, contributing to a tapestry of knowledge that grows richer with every passing day. But the journey toward Type 1 status is not merely technical. It is, at its heart, a question of society, of minds and cultures as much as machines. For every new technology, there are choices to be made: where to build, who will benefit, how to share the costs and the rewards. The United Nations, the European Union, countless NGOs and grassroots movements, all are engaged in experiments, not of physics or chemistry, but of governance and cooperation. The Paris Agreement, with its intricate web of pledges and targets, is itself an audacious experiment. Can nations act together for the good of the whole, rather than the narrow interests of the part? In smaller ways, too, experiments unfold. Cities pledge to go carbon neutral, to ban fossil-fueled cars, to plant 1 million trees. Rural communities band together to build local microgrids, harnessing wind and sun for themselves. Inventors design low-cost solar lamps for villages where night once meant darkness. Each project is a step, sometimes faltering, sometimes bold, along the path toward planetary maturity. And all the while, in the background, the quiet march of measurement continues. The Keeling curve, a simple line traced by a machine atop Mauna Loa, records the rising breath of carbon dioxide. Tree rings, ice cores, sediment layers, these too are tools, time machines that carry us backward, revealing the history of Earth's climate, its cycles of warmth and cold, its moments of crisis and renewal. By reading these records, we learn not only what the planet has endured, but how resilient and yet how fragile it truly is. The tools of tomorrow are not limited to those that gather and transform energy. They include the slowly unfolding networks of planetary stewardship, satellites that watch for the flicker of wildfires, for the spread of drought, for the bleaching of coral reefs. Geneticists who map the DNA of crops and trees, seeking to breed resilience against changing climates. Ecologists who design corridors for wildlife, linking fragmented habitats into living tapestries. In each case, the experiment is the same. Can we, as a species, learn to see the planet as a system and ourselves as its caretakers? The most profound experiments, perhaps, are those of the mind. In schools and universities, in museums and libraries, we teach the next generation not just facts, but ways of thinking. Critical inquiry, creative problem-solving, the humility to question our own assumptions, these are the tools that will shape the decisions yet to come. The stories we tell, the visions we share, the dreams we dare to pursue, these too are experiments, for they shape the boundaries of what we believe is possible. Each advance, each clever device or algorithm is a thread in the great tapestry of our evolution. The journey is not smooth, nor is it certain. There are setbacks, failures, moments of doubt. There are debates, sometimes fierce, over which path to take, whose voices to heed, how to weigh the needs of today against the hopes of tomorrow. In the push and pull of politics and economics, of tradition and innovation, the shape of the future is forged. Yet, for all the uncertainty, there is a quiet momentum, a sense that the tools in our hands are more powerful, more interconnected than ever before. We stand, perhaps, at the threshold of something new, a civilization not defined by what it can consume, but by what it can sustain. Our journey has only begun, and the horizon is wide. As night deepens and the world settles into silence, a final thought lingers. Somewhere, in a laboratory or a workshop, a new experiment is underway. A solar cell is pushed to its limits. A computer model churns through oceans of data. A group of children, their faces lit by curiosity, ask questions that have never been asked before. The tools of tomorrow are being forged, quietly, patiently, in the hands of those who dare to dream. And with each step, we move closer to the world that waits, just out of reach, but growing clearer with every dawn. For now, let us rest in the gentle certainty that the story is still unfolding, that the experiments have only begun, and that the journey to Type 1 is, above all, a journey of wonder. The next act will bring us deeper into the question of what it means to truly become planetary, of the challenges that remain and the paths still shrouded in mist. But for tonight, let the hum of machines, the whisper of data, and the quiet pulse of hope carry you gently onward into dreams where the tools of tomorrow glimmer on the horizon, waiting to be used, waiting to be understood. Beyond the hum of turbines and the glimmer of city lights, beyond the soft blue arc of Earth's atmosphere and the silent churn of the global weather, there is a mirror. It is not one found in silvered glass or polished steel, but in the cosmic attention that the universe bestows upon its actors. This mirror is the gaze we cast upon ourselves as a species, refracted through the lens of possibility, evolution, and the question that has haunted every age. What does it mean to become more than what we are? To contemplate humanity on the threshold of Type 1 civilization is to stand before this mirror, peering not only into the future, but deep into the wells of our own significance. The journey is not merely technological, measured in exabytes and gigawatts, but spiritual, philosophical, a reckoning with our place in the unfolding tapestry of cosmic time. Let us begin with the notion itself. A Type 1 civilization, by the scale devised by the astrophysicist Nikolai Kardashev, is one that harnesses and directs the total energy available to a planet. It is an achievement that in the cold calculus of physics might seem only a matter of engineering and resourcefulness. But what is energy in its deepest sense, if not agency? To command the winds, the tides, the heat of the earth, to shape the weather and tame the very cycles that once threatened our ancestors with famine or flood. This is to become, at last, the conscious shaper of a planetary destiny. Yet the mirror asks, who is this we who would command? The path to Type 1 is not a solitary march of invention, but a tapestry woven from the threads of every human heart, every mind, every culture. It demands not the supremacy of a single nation or ideology, but the emergence of a planetary consciousness. Imagine the slow, patient accumulation of trust required to share what was once hoarded, the sunlit deserts of the Sahara becoming solar fields for all, the swirling winds off the southern oceans transformed to electricity for distant cities, the rivers and geothermal vents of every continent harnessed in a choreography so intricate it can only be danced by all. In this planetary choreography, diversity is not a hindrance, but a wellspring. For every culture, every language, every tradition is a way of seeing, a unique lens through which the world is made meaningful. To become Type 1 is not to erase these differences, but to let them harmonize, to let the many voices of humanity rise in a symphony greater than any could perform alone. Perhaps the greatest technological leap is not in superconductors or fusion reactors, but in the invention of trust and empathy at a planetary scale. Here, the philosopher's question arises: what is it to be a civilization? Is it the sum of our cities and machines, or something subtler, the stories we tell, the values we uphold, the way we care for the fragile green skin of the world? To be Type 1 is to realize, with a clarity that stirs awe and trembling, that we are not passengers on a planet, but stewards, gardeners, partners in the unfolding of life's improbable drama. The energy we command is, in the end, the energy of responsibility. Let us wander for a moment into the domain of meaning. For millennia, humanity's gaze has been drawn upward, to the stars, seeking signs of order or kinship. We have mapped the constellations, told stories of gods and heroes, measured the motions of planets with instruments ever more precise. Yet, in all our searching, the universe has remained silent, a vast cathedral whose echoes are our own. What then would it mean to join the imagined brotherhood of civilizations who have crossed the planetary threshold before us? Is there, as some have dreamed, a fellowship of minds who have awakened to their power and their peril, who watch, perhaps, with patient interest as new civilizations flicker toward awakening? Perhaps the transition to Type 1 is the moment the universe notices us, not as a collection of clever apes, but as an entity with the power to shape and preserve, to destroy or to save. Some have called this the Great Filter, the point at which many civilizations may stumble and fall, undone by their own might. For to command the energy of a planet is to hold in our hands the tools not only of creation, but of extinction. Here the mirror grows dark and deep, reflecting not only our potential, but our shadow. What, then, is the meaning of this threshold? It is a question of choice. Will we use our power to heal the wounds of history, to restore the balance of biospheres battered by our early ambition? Or will we repeat, on a vaster scale, the cycles of rivalry and fear that have haunted every age? The philosopher and the scientist, the poet and the engineer, all must speak here. For the story of Type 1 is not written in equations alone, but in the living choices of billions. Consider for a moment the shape of a Type 1 world. Its cities glow with borrowed sunlight. Its seas are navigated by ships whose sails are spun from the breath of the wind. The deserts bloom with crops watered by rivers whose courses are managed by wisdom, not greed. The night is dark, not because we lack for light, but because we have learned to cherish the stars. The old divisions, nation, creed, even species, have begun to blur, replaced by a new identity, earthling, child of the blue planet. Yet beneath this vision, the old questions remain. What is it to be human when our needs are met not by toil or violence, but by the abundance of a managed world? Will we grow complacent, or will we turn our energies to art, to discovery, to the long labor of understanding ourselves and the universe? The philosopher in us whispers that meaning is not given by circumstance, but made by choice. The cosmic mirror reflects not what we have, but what we become. And what of mystery? For even in a world of mastery, there are limits. The energy of a planet is vast, but the universe is vaster still. Beyond the horizon, the stars burn with indifferent fire, their distances measured in centuries and light. To become Type 1 is not to end the journey, but to set out upon it with new tools and new questions. If we learn to live as one, to steward the earth as a garden rather than a quarry, then perhaps we will look outward, not as conquerors, but as explorers, curious, humble, alive to wonder. Here too lies a paradox. Mastery over energy may grant us safety and abundance, but it does not guarantee wisdom. The story of technology is also the story of unintended consequence, of power misused or misunderstood. The same fires that light our cities can scorch the sky. The same networks that connect can also divide. To be Type 1 is to live always in the tension between power and humility, between what we can do and what we should do. Let us linger on this tension, for it is the crucible in which our future will be forged. The philosopher Spinoza wrote that freedom is the understanding of necessity, the recognition that to be truly free is not to act without constraint, but to act with knowledge, with foresight, with care. As we command the energies of Earth, we become, in a sense, the consciousness of the planet itself. Our choices ripple outward, shaping not only our own fate, but that of every creature, every forest, every river and cloud. And so the meaning of Type 1 is not merely technological but existential. It is the moment when humanity ceases to be a quarrelsome multitude and becomes, perhaps for the first time, a single actor in the cosmic play. We are the planet made aware of itself, the voice of Earth answering at last the silent music of the stars. Yet in the stillness of night, another question arises. Will this voice be one of harmony or discord? The lesson of evolution is that cooperation and competition are not enemies but partners. The biosphere itself is a symphony of interdependence, every organism shaping and shaped by the others. To be planetary is to learn from this, to see our fate entwined with that of all life. Perhaps then the greatest mystery is not in the stars, but in ourselves. For the journey to Type 1 is also a journey inward, to the depths of consciousness, meaning and connection. As our machines grow smarter, as our networks bind us in webs of information and empathy, we must ask not only what we can build, but what we wish to become. Will we use our mastery to heal, to create, to explore, or will we turn inward, building walls of fear around islands of privilege, letting the abundance of the world be squandered by the few? The answer is not written in the laws of physics, but in the choices we make, day by day, generation by generation. And perhaps, as we gaze into the cosmic mirror, we will see not only our own face, but the faces of all who have come before. The first toolmaker knapping flint by firelight, the scribe setting words to clay, the astronomer charting the dance of planets in the night sky. Their dreams flow into ours, a river of hope and longing, shaping the shores of possibility. In the hush that falls before dawn, the world is quiet but not empty. The wind stirs the grasses, the waves lap against distant shores, and somewhere a child looks up at the stars, wondering. The journey to Type 1 is not a destination, but a becoming, a slow, patient unfolding of potential, of meaning, of connection. We are, each of us, threads in this tapestry woven from the sunlight and stardust of forgotten stars. Our choices matter, not only for ourselves, but for the generations who will follow, for the creatures who share our world, for the silent watchers who may, in distant eons, listen for the music of awakening planets. So, as the night deepens and the world turns beneath the silent gaze of the stars, let us rest in the knowledge that the journey is not yet ended. The mirror waits, reflecting not only what we are, but what we may yet become. The meaning of Type 1 is not a prize to be won, but a question to be lived, a mystery as vast as the universe itself and as intimate as the beating of a single human heart. And somewhere, in the space between dreaming and waking, the story continues, a story of energy and consciousness, of power and humility, of the fragile, beautiful planet we have been given and the future we are called to shape together. As our journey through the stars gently drifts to a close, we find ourselves cradled beneath the vast cosmic canopy, where the shimmering hope of becoming a Type 1 civilization glows like a comet tail fading into the hush of space. Let your thoughts wander softly among these dreams, and when you're ready, return with me for more quiet mysteries whispered by the universe in our next Dreamtime Science tale.